The holidays are a time for joy, laughter, and gathering with loved ones. But not every Christmas story is filled with cheer. Some are wrapped in mystery, unease, and just a touch of terror. Tonight, we're unwrapping a very different kind of holiday gift, a collection of chilling tales that will make you think twice about leaving cookies out for Santa or staying up to catch a glimpse of him. From ghostly visitors to strange things lurking in the snow, these stories prove that even the most magical time of year has its darker side. So, grab a blanket, turn down the lights, and prepare to experience the eerie side of Christmas. Just be careful, because you never know who, or what, might be watching this holiday season.
I'm not usually one to believe in supernatural stuff, but what happened last Christmas Eve still gives me the creeps. I need to get it off my chest. My family has a tradition of renting an old cabin in the woods for the holidays, and last year, I was the first to arrive. The cabin is this charming, isolated place with a fireplace, old wooden beams, and a warm, cozy feeling, usually. But something about it felt off as soon as I stepped inside. That first night, it started to snow heavily. I settled by the fire trying to get comfortable when I heard what sounded like tiny footsteps. I thought it must have been some kind of animal, maybe mice in the walls, so I tried to ignore it. But the footsteps kept coming, scratching softly from different parts of the cabin. And then for a moment, I swore I heard giggling, just a faint, high-pitched laugh, like children playing. I got up and checked every corner, but nothing was there. I told myself it was just the wind, even though I knew it didn't sound like the wind at all. The next morning, I went outside to grab some firewood. That's when I noticed them, tiny footprints in the snow. They were way too small to be a person's and didn't look like any animal tracks I'd ever seen. They looked human. Little feet, maybe the size of a child's doll, leading in a trail all around the cabin. My heart started pounding as I followed the footprints. They circled the cabin, leading up to each window, like something had been walking around, peeking in. As I got to the back of the cabin, the footprints suddenly stopped, right below my bedroom window. And there on the window pane, I saw tiny handprints, almost like someone, or something, had been pressing its hands against the glass, watching me sleep. At this point, I was freaked out, but I convinced myself it was some prank, maybe neighborhood kids messing around, even though I knew no one else was nearby. That night, I locked all the doors and windows and tried to sleep, but I kept hearing those faint footsteps outside, scurrying around in the snow. Every so often, I'd hear that same high-pitched giggling, like something was playing hide-and-seek just outside the cabin. The next morning, my family arrived. I didn't want to freak them out, so I didn't mention the footprints or the laughter. But then, as we were sitting down to breakfast, my niece, who's only 4, looked out the window and whispered, "There's an elf outside." I froze. My brother laughed it off, saying she had an active imagination, but I could feel my skin crawl. When I looked out the window, I didn't see anything, but when I went outside later, the tiny footprints were back, leading in circles around the cabin. I've spent a lot of time trying to make sense of it. I don't know if it was just a prank, some weird animal, or something else. But this year, I'll be spending Christmas somewhere else, far from that cabin in the woods. Whatever those footprints were, I don't want to be there to find out what left them.
Christmas Eve was always magical in our house. My daughter Mia was 8 that year, and her excitement was infectious. She'd spent hours decorating cookies for Santa, carefully placing them by the fireplace alongside a tall glass of milk. "He's going to love these," she said with a grin, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. After tucking her into bed, my wife and I sat on the couch, admiring the glow of the tree. It was one of those rare, peaceful moments. Eventually, we called it a night, eager to see Mia's joy in the morning. Around 3 a.m., I shot upright in bed to the sound of Mia screaming. My heart was pounding as I rushed to her room, my wife close behind me. Mia was sitting up in bed, clutching her blanket and pointing to the far corner of the room. Tears streamed down her face. "He was here," she sobbed. "Who, sweetie?" I asked, crouching next to her. "Santa," she whispered. But he wasn't right. I froze. What do you mean? She began describing what she'd seen, a tall figure dressed in red, but not the kind of Santa you'd see in books or on TV. She said his eyes glowed white, like fire, and his arms were so long they nearly touched the floor. His suit looked wet, as if it was dripping. My wife and I exchanged uneasy glances. You probably just had a bad dream, I said, trying to reassure her. Sometimes when you're excited, your mind plays tricks on you. But Mia was insistent. It wasn't a dream. He was standing right there, she said, pointing toward the fireplace. After calming her down and getting her back into bed, I checked the baby monitor footage out of curiosity. At first, it showed nothing unusual, just Mia sleeping soundly. Then, at exactly 2:57 a.m., the screen glitched. For a split second, something appeared in the frame. It was dark, crouched by the fireplace, with limbs that bent in ways no humans ever should. Its head slowly turned toward the camera, and for that brief moment, I swear I saw its glowing eyes staring directly at me. The screen flickered to static, then returned to normal. I felt the blood drain from my face. My wife was pale, her hand gripping my arm. We ran back to Mia's room. She was standing at the window now, staring outside. Look, she whispered. I followed her gaze and saw it. In the fresh snow outside, leading from the chimney to the woods, were enormous footprints. Each step was deep, too big for a person, and spaced so far apart it was impossible to imagine how they'd been made. We didn't stay in the house much longer that day. Presents stayed unopened, and by sunset, we were packed and gone. We never spent another Christmas in that house. To this day, I wonder what Mia saw, or worse, what I almost saw.
I wasn't planning on writing this, but every time I think back to last Christmas Eve, I get chills all over again. Maybe sharing it will help me make sense of it. I'll try to keep this short. Last year, I rented a small cabin upstate to get away from the holiday chaos. I'd had a rough year, so I wanted some quiet time, maybe read a few books, and drink a ridiculous amount of hot chocolate. It was supposed to be peaceful. Just me, a cozy fire, and the snow falling outside. On Christmas Eve, I was about to head to bed when I heard something strange outside, a faint sound of singing. I figured it was a group of carolers from town. I'd read somewhere that caroling on Christmas Eve was a tradition in this part of the country. The idea of people wandering through the snow to sing carols for strangers seemed sweet, even if it was a bit late. The singing got closer, and I was curious, so I cracked the door open just a bit to see who it was. The moon was so bright it practically lit up the snow, and there, coming down the path, were 4 figures. They were all dressed in these thick, old-fashioned cloaks, and their faces were covered by hoods. Their voices were beautiful, haunting, and they sang this strange old tune I didn't recognize. As they got closer, though, something felt wrong. They weren't walking normally. It was like they were gliding over the snow, not leaving footprints. And the song they were singing, it didn't sound like any Christmas carol I'd ever heard. The words were foreign, and the melody was too slow, too eerie, like a lullaby meant to put you to sleep forever. I started to feel this weird urge to go outside, like I had to join them. I was so close to stepping out when one of them stopped singing and spoke in this raspy, almost whispering voice. "We know you're in there. Come with us. Join the carol." That snapped me out of it. I slammed the door, locked it, and backed away, my heart racing. The singing stopped, and everything went dead silent. I sat there for what felt like hours, just waiting, listening. But they didn't leave. I could feel them right outside, like they were just waiting for me to open the door again. I must have fallen asleep somehow, because when I woke up, it was Christmas morning, and they were gone. I checked outside, and sure enough, there were no footprints, nothing in the snow. But here's the thing that still freaks me out. Later that day, I found a single piece of parchment on my doorstep. It had a line of music scrawled on it, the same haunting melody they'd been singing. I kept it as a reminder to never spend Christmas Eve alone in that cabin again. And I swear if I ever hear carolers singing that tune again, I'm running the other way.
Every family has that one weird tradition, right? For us, it's that each year, one of us gets a mystery gift. It's kind of a joke, actually, usually some random gift someone threw together last minute or found in the back of a closet. But last Christmas, things got strange. I'm still not sure who gave it to me, and I don't think I ever want to know. Christmas Eve is always a big thing at our house. Family, friends, food, the whole package. We do a gift exchange and everything, and when it was finally my turn, there it was, this plain, brown-wrapped box with no name or tag, just open alone scribbled on the top in messy black marker. I thought it was my cousin playing a prank, maybe a gag gift, so I laughed and asked who'd wrapped it, but everyone just looked at me blankly. I opened the gift in my room later, like the label said, expecting some silly joke or prank. Inside was an old, tarnished locket. It looked antique, like something you'd find at a flea market. I was about to brush it off, but then I noticed a photo inside. It was a picture of me. And not just any picture, but one from a summer camping trip I'd taken with friends years ago. I'd never shared that picture with my family or friends, it was just something I'd snapped on my old phone and forgotten about. I was creeped out, but figured someone had just gone all out for the prank, so I tucked it away and tried to let it go. But that night, as I was lying in bed, I couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. It was like the locket was calling to me. I decided to open it up again, thinking maybe there was something else inside I'd missed, a clue or a note, maybe. But when I did, the photo had changed. It wasn't the picture from my camping trip anymore. Now, it showed me sitting in my room, staring at the locket in shock, wearing the exact pajamas I was wearing right then. I threw the locket into my dresser drawer, telling myself I'd deal with it later, maybe throw it out in the morning. But when I woke up, it was back on my nightstand, open to a new picture, this time of me asleep in bed, taken from right beside my pillow. Over the next few days, it kept reappearing, always showing pictures of me, doing things that no one else could have taken. At first, it was mundane moments, making breakfast, brushing my teeth, doing laundry. But then it started showing moments I didn't remember, like a photo of me standing on the front porch in the middle of the night, looking down the road. Another of me standing in the basement, staring at a dark corner, even though I never go down there alone. Finally, I decided to get rid of it. I drove miles out of town and threw it into a river, hoping that would be the end of it. I even left it there for days without any sign of it. But on New Year's Eve, there it was on my nightstand again, pristine as ever, with a new photo inside. This time, it was a close-up of my face, sleeping in bed. And the creepiest part? It looked like I was smiling. I tried everything to get rid of that thing. I buried it, burned it, and even gave it away to a stranger in a different city, but it always came back. Now, I just keep it in a lockbox under my bed, praying it stays there. Every now and then, I hear it clicking open, but I try to ignore it. This Christmas Eve, I'm considering moving far away, hoping maybe it won't find me again. But I know that's probably wishful thinking. Because every time I get close to the box, I swear, I can feel it waiting for me, knowing that soon, I'll have to look again.
All right, I know this sounds insane, and I wouldn't believe it if it hadn't happened to me. But after what I saw last Christmas Eve, I'm not taking any chances this year. I don't care if you believe me. I just need to get this out. It started when I went back home for the holidays. My family lives in this tiny village in Austria, where Christmas traditions run deep. We have this whole Krampusnacht thing every December 5th. You know, people dressing up as Krampus and parading through the streets to scare kids into behaving. I thought it was all fun and games, but last year, it felt different. When I got to my parents' house, the vibe was off. My little sister Lisa wouldn't stop talking about Krampus, saying things like, "He's watching, you know, and better be good or he'll come tonight." I just laughed it off. I figured she was just being a kid, getting into the Christmas spirit in a spooky way. Then on Christmas Eve, it snowed like crazy, and we ended up getting snowed in. No big deal. We settled in with hot chocolate, a fire crackling in the fireplace, and holiday music on the radio. But every so often, I'd catch Lisa staring out the window wide-eyed, like she was expecting something. When I asked her what was wrong, she just whispered, "He's close." I laughed and told her Krampus was just a myth, but the way she looked at me, I don't know, it gave me chills. That night I couldn't sleep. I don't know why. It was like there was this pressure in the air, like I could feel something lurking. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps outside, just crunching in the snow. At first I thought maybe it was a deer or something, but then I heard it, a low guttural growl. I got up and crept over to the window, half expecting to see nothing. But there, in the dim light from the street lamp, I saw something. It was tall, towering over the snowdrifts, with horns curving out of its head in these long, gangly limbs. Its face was twisted, with eyes that glowed like embers, and its tongue, this long, sharp red tongue, hung out of its mouth. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. And then it looked right at me. In a panic, I dropped to the floor, hoping it hadn't seen me. I don't know how long I stayed there frozen. Finally, I crawled to my bed, covered my head with a blanket, and waited for morning. When I woke up, it was Christmas morning. I thought maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, that it was just a nightmare brought on by too many ghost stories. But then Lisa came downstairs, her face pale as snow. She looked at me and said, "Did he find you too?" I haven't gone back home since.